Andre, if you could share the organization you're coming from, what brought you to LORE, and a little bit about your experience in the program with that question in mind. How did centering equity help improve effectiveness and efficiency?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Andre Allen. I serve as Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Peoria County Government, which is in Peoria, Illinois, not Peoria, Arizona. I was or I guess I became aware of LORE. My counterpart for the city of Peoria, Melanie Green, who will be joining the call, I think, in a little bit. She was in, I believe, the first cohort of LORE, her and our city manager with the city of Peoria. And the city manager and my supervisor, the county administrator, Scott Sorrell, they have a pretty good relationship. And so I believe just through their conversations, and my position was brand new when I was hired in 22. So we were looking for some foundational opportunities for us to get involved in to kind of build our structure for advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion within Peoria County Government. And so Melody had great things to say about LORE and how they advanced their pilot, which focused more so on procurement opportunities. And so I joined and really didn't know what to expect, but I just knew that it was good for me to network with other practitioners throughout the state. I was very excited about that. And then I thought it was a good opportunity that we were essentially charged with an action item of creating a pilot that we can take back. And so this is one of those things where I was able to put this pilot in our action plan. We do yearly action plans after we conclude our annual evaluation for the upcoming year. And one of the priorities of our department is recruitment and retention efforts. You know, our goal is to be a internal organization that represents the entire county that we serve. We use the most recent census data from 2022 to kind of serve as that North Star. And so when we look at our internal workforce, there's definitely some opportunities for improvement in that space. And so we were looking to launch a recruitment and retention pilot with the department within our county. And we ultimately chose our Juvenile Detention Center, which they had already started on this journey. They experienced a lot of turnover, just due to the nature of the job. It's very challenging work. But for them, they were really wanting to diversify their workforce because many of the clients that they serve, they come from underrepresented communities and not just necessarily from a racial makeup of diversifying their employees, but also from like a lived experience standpoint as well. Many of the youth were coming from urban areas, and not saying that someone from a rural community can't be impactful, but they may not have the same lived experiences that some of these clients have. So when we were doing our series of meetings with different department heads, once I got hired and then my coworker Brittany got hired, when we met with them, they were very excited about us supporting in them. And so having that desire for someone to want to work with you really made the marriage a lot easier for us. So when we came to them and said, hey, we're looking at launching this pilot, we're part of this leadership cohort called LORE, and they were all for it. We didn't have to pull their teeth to get them involved. So that made the process very, very smooth. And so we launched our recruitment and retention pilot with them. Ultimately, it led, it was based off of kind of a series of conversations of what they were looking for. They kind of shared with us some of their challenges that they have, and then we looked for some different opportunities. We were able to connect with Dr. Yang Clayton, and ultimately she made the recommendation of us doing a focus group. And so she came on down to good old Peoria and hosted a focus group with a member of their senior leadership team and about 4 or 5 employees. And we got some good data from them, some things that we assumed, this is some things that we didn't assume. And some of the things that the team members voiced, we were able to put into practice. So a couple of those included not feeling like the job description was as transparent as it needed to be about the actual work. So they made changes to that. They were called youth. They were called youth development specialists, which sounds like someone that works at Big Brothers Big Sisters or the Boys and Girls Club versus at the Juvenile Detention Center. And so they wanted to change the job title to that. So now they're called youth detention specialists. And that that language sounds a little more, I would say, a little more rougher than the youth development specialist. But also, too, when you apply for that role, you kind of know what you're going to get, going into that space. And then lastly, they wanted to do, they recommended job shadowing ahead of time before getting hired. And the management at the JDC said that'd be great because we would rather you, almost see what's going on, be a job shadowing versus us hiring you, training you, investing in you, and then ultimately you quit 2 months later. And so those things have all been implemented since the beginning of Q1 of this year, and we look forward to following up with them and seeing how some of how that data is trending. And then also too, we were looking at creating other opportunities to help pipeline more diverse individuals into the JDC. So I connected them with the director of public safety for Peoria Public Schools, which are our local school district, and they always have an overflow of applicants for their employee resource officers. And so instead of us losing those individuals who want to be in law enforcement and work with, unfortunately, a lot of the population that pipelines into the JDC, let's go ahead and figure out how the safety director can recommend applying to the JDC, and we can keep those people in that space. And so I look forward to seeing what matriculates from that recommendation as well. And then I'll conclude with just looking at the question of how did centering equity in the pilot lead to effectiveness and efficiency. I would say when you center equity, at least for myself, it's our North Star, it's our foundation. And so, when I look at the specific pilot, excuse me, about what equity issues that we were looking to address. Well, one, we know that we were looking to diversify our workforce. We pay head of household wages. We are in the IMRF pension system, which is very rare, and so we need to have a population that's able to benefit from these benefits that we offer as an employer. And so we knew that diversifying our workforce, that checks a box within equity. And then also too, I think when we were looking at trying to be a workforce that is desirable, I think having equity at the lens of that, and then addressing some of the challenges that people are saying, and not saying that we're looking to lower standards by no means. I believe that you can have accountability and support at the same time. Ultimately, hopefully that will impact our retention, which that's ultimately what our board cares about as well too. Our board wants us to be a workforce where people are the desire to work, and that we ultimately we keep as well too. So overall, I think we're in a good position. We got some things kind of planted, and we'll see what waters towards the end of this year.
Yeah, just to build a little bit, Andre, that was great. The centering equity piece was really critical in the JDC, the Juvenile Detention Center pilot, because it leads us to ask the question, who is most impacted, right? And in this case, we're looking at internal operations. So we're not looking externally. Our work is about the internal environment of public organizations and how we can practice equity inside so we can get to more equity on the outside, right? That's like the simplest way to put that. So that's why using that equity lens, that's when, I remember we were going through this, Andre, that we were thinking like, yeah, like who is most impacted? And we realized it was the juvenile specialists or development specialists, and that no one had spoken with them really about their experience.
Yeah. They're
I
kind
know
of
it sounds really simple, right?
and
But
it was very interesting because I always heard that people are leaving because of pay, because of pay, because of pay. And pay never came up as a reason of why they were leaving. Now, granted, if I said, hey, we're going to offer you a 20% raise, everybody's going to raise their hand. But that was not the reason why they were leaving that position. It was we're not trained. We're not trained. We are understaffed. Uh, our lives are being threatened. And so if we knew about this ahead of time, maybe we wouldn't have applied, or maybe that scares certain people off. And so we were able to, when it came to pitching that to the management, like anytime you have to like spend money, that's when like people kind of shut down, especially depending on like the makeup of your different boards that you report to. If you have a board that's more fiscally conservative and things of that nature, they don't want to spend money, you know. But when you can point to things that you can do to make your organization better from an equity lens, and it everything has a cost, but it doesn't have maybe that monetary cost right away. I think that also will help, get more buy-in as well. And so when we were able to bring these things forward, and then when I met with Dr. Yang Clayton recently, she was in Peoria. Our two of our board members co-chaired a committee, and they were doing an assessment of the JDC. And when they met with the JDC, they were able to say, hey, we met with Andre and Brittany, who work in the DEI office, and they made these recommendations for us to address our recruitment and retention efforts, because that was like a big focus of the board. And they were able to point to us, and then I was able to provide our report out that we did from lore. And that made both of our departments look good. It made the JDC look like they were doing something proactive that a board member asked them for. And then it gave our department value, because sometimes those who aren't in the work, they have a hard time describing, and we all have to do a better job about this. You know, when you get on the elevator and you tell somebody you're a chief DI officer or equity practitioner or whatever, you have to have that elevator speech of what that really means. And so we were able to show these board members that, I know you may think that we're just doing implicit bias trainings all day, but no, we're actually bringing value to our departments, and this is how we're doing it. And this was the return on investment that we had by participating in lore. It was a financial investment, but it was, and this is what the dividends we were able to bring back to our organization.
Right. And Andre, wasn't that, I don't know what the figure is, but I know that you and I are going to try to find the new retention numbers. But like this was back in 22, like right after COVID, they had just been trying to recruit, and their turnover rates were crazy high. Like it
Yeah.
was, I forgot what number. I don't want to quote a number because I forgot it, but it was
I think it was like
exceptionally high.
I think it was like 125 positions or people had turned over the
Yeah, out
last
of
3 years.
yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And so we have to, you connect the equity piece, which is let's listen to who's there and understand what their challenges are, because there's an efficiency argument around, if we can figure out why people are leaving, then let's fix it so that they stop leaving and we stop wasting money posting, recruiting, onboarding, and then seeing them walk out through the door. And then there's an effectiveness argument there, which is when you get the right people and you support them, then they will be better specialists. They will stay and help support those young people and get them to a better place and do all those things instead of the revolving door. So the efficiency and effectiveness argument is driven through that initial lens of thinking about equity, not just as a, like what you were saying, Andre, like a good to have or like an implicit bias training, but really that lens that helps you understand who do we need to go talk with, who needs the most help here, and then let's move forward from there.
Yeah, it was I would say for us, especially being a brand new unit, like I said, I was hired in 22. Like most organizations, it was a reaction, to the murder of George Floyd. And we were able to come in and have something tangible that we can work on right away, which I think gives value. And so when departments right now are kind of having the challenge of demonstrating their effectiveness, especially right now when it comes to what DEI is or isn't, we don't have those same challenges because we were able to take, this pilot that we learned in lore and show that, and people can see it and they can feel it, versus us just again doing a bunch of implicit bias trainings, and then people are like, well, how you're making a change? Well, 22 people came. Well, what did they get out of it? Those are hard things to quantify, and so this is something that we can put some solid KPIs on that our board can wrap their head around.
Thank you, Andre.